Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Strike Zone. My name is Bill Jensen, and you're watching the VBS Broadcasting System. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to bring to you tonight some information about the Trump rally at Madison Square Gardens, where Hulk Hogan had the crowd on its feet. Yep, the crowd was cheering USA, 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 like you can't believe. About brought the house down. And it was to the tune of a real American, "It lives and it breathes." I thought it was an exemplary performance by Hulk Hogan. Following all of the good things that Hulk Hogan had to say to the crowd about America and where we stand if Donald Trump is elected, it was followed by Kid Rock's music that played the intro to guests like Dr. Phil. Dr. Phil is also the founder of Merit Street Media. And I've got to tell you, of all the times I've watched Dr. Phil, I have to give him more credit for the speech that he gave at Madison Square Gardens than I think I could give him for anything I've ever seen. And Dr. Phil has done a lot, and I'm certainly not the person to pass judgment on the career of anybody. But Dr. Phil's explanation to the crowd for the reasons for cause and effect with regard to all of the harassment people have taken for standing up for Donald Trump or standing out in the open for Donald Trump and taking the hits from the media and their workplace or whatever the case might be was outstanding. Dr. Phil thanked all of the Americans who turned out for the Madison Square Garden event, and the scenario that he gave about Donald Trump was such that the system, the government that had been weaponized against him had tried to bankrupt him, had tried to railroad him, had tried to sue him, had indicted him, and even shot him. And yet Donald Trump just keeps coming. I got to tell you, Dr. Phil had the crowd on its feet. Donald Trump doesn't need celebrities, Dr. Phil said, to endorse him, because what do celebrities know at the end of the day? Well, Dr. Phil is probably the exception because psychologically he knows what motivates and generates a certain behavior. And he did his best to explain that. And I think he did a really good job, because when he explained that people thought that Trump was a bully, he said, well, what is the definition of a bully? Dr. Phil said, well, it's somebody who would cause harm or intimidate or cancel or coerce another person into doing something. Well, that's all the things they want to accuse Donald Trump of doing publicly, correct? Well, except for one problem. The government has all of the money, all of the media, all of the strength and the power of the military, the executive branch, and even the rhinos in Congress that vote with the Democrats to organize themselves against Donald Trump trying to drain the swamp. So Dr. Phil explained that the only way you can be a bully is if there's an imbalance of power. And that imbalance of power says that Trump can't bully them because they're on the same pulpit that he is. They have the same power, and they have a problem. Trump is better than all of them at this game, and he is absolutely kicking their ass square. And I don't think that they can do anything to stop it, but to cheat, to lie. When you have somebody like Kamala Harris calling him a Nazi in the 11th hour before the election, you know that this is the last gasp of a dying regime, to put it in Steve Bannon's words. Dr. Phil said that there were other important events that are similar to this election as important things go. And one of those was that after 9/11, that on 9/12, the day after 9/11, we were all Americans. On that day, we were all Americans. That having been said, if we banded together today the way we banded together on 9/11 and 9/12, then nobody is going to put down the average American who is going to stand up for this country because they love it, because they are invested in it, because they believe in it, because they have fought for it in the military, in any one of the branches, Army, Navy, Marines, Coast Guard, you name it, Army. We have all put our time in. I know I have. I put 23 years in for this country, and I swore to defend it from enemies, both foreign and domestic. And in this particular situation, ladies and gentlemen, the enemy is domestic. Make no mistake. When you have people weaponizing this judicial system to the extent that a fraudulent January 6th committee can issue a subpoena to a presidential advisor, such as Peter Navarro, such as Steve Bannon, and you can throw them in jail for 120 days, and in Steve Bannon's case, ignore the First Step Act for early release for a nonviolent person, etc., in a political imprisonment situation, the judge decided, Judge Nichols, by the way, the one that should be removed from bench, denied Bannon's release early. So we'll be lucky if maybe here on October the 29th, Steve Bannon is released. I understand from the media that the War Room is expecting him back on television on the 29th, no later than the 30th, that Steve Bannon is supposed to be released from prison and back on the air. If this isn't an example of people politically trying to silence a conservative, right-leaning effort, then there is no better example. If they can put Peter Navarro in jail, if they can put the January 6ers in jail and leave them for 3.5 years without being charged, without being indicted, and no sign of it coming, if that isn't a political prisoner, what is? In some of these cases, these people on January 6th were invited into the Capitol building by security, by police. They did nothing wrong. And then the government weaponized your cell phone to geo-track you across the United States, kick your door in, raid your house at night, and throw you in jail and never indict you? What do you think this is, Cuba? What do you think this is, Russia or China? You don't do that to American citizens. And let me tell you what, if this presidential situation changes and Donald Trump is elected, don't worry about revenge. Don't worry about other ill-fated words. Worry about the word justice, because everything that was done to Peter Navarro, Steve Bannon, and everybody else in the lineup that was indicted and prosecuted, Donald Trump Jr., indicted what? 22 times, served subpoenas 22 times or more. What did Donald Trump say? He's had more subpoenas served on his son than anybody in the United States has ever had. And Trump's been indicted and served more subpoenas than Al Capone, right? So don't worry, those of you in government, about any vindictive action. Worry about justice, because when it's handed out evenly and the way you've treated the United States citizen, you're going to be on the receiving end. You have bankrupted this nation by refusing to allow us to drill for oil, to the point that we are now begging with the Biden regime to Saudi Arabia to provide us with some oil. Are you kidding? We're buying bunker oil out of Venezuela or wherever in Central or South America we can manage to find it, instead of drilling our own oil. You have put us in a position where you have doubled, or maybe more than doubled, the cost of gasoline. You caused 30% increase in the cost of fuel, and you bankrupted families across the United States. Not only did you bankrupt families across the United States in fuel costs, guess what happened when you had to put the bread and the eggs and the milk on a truck and send it to the grocery store? Of course it costs 30% more to deliver it. It's going to cost you 30% more at the store. It'll cost 30% more to feed the cattle, to feed the pigs, and everything else that we bring to market, whether it's corn, wheat, barley, rye. Everything's going up, including your auto parts, your tennis shoes, your shirts, your pants, your tires. Everything that you've got is up 30%. Why? Because a bunch of freaking environmental terrorists decided that you can't drill for oil anymore. We are the cleanest burning fossil fuel country in the world. Other countries are polluting the atmosphere by taking zero action, yet we have catalytic converters. Now we've got the maniacs, these other environmental terrorists in California telling us we can't have gas burning stoves. And I got to tell you, you're not going to tell me that I can't have a gas burning stove because I'm not cooking a tortilla on an electric burner. It just doesn't work. So drop dead, you environmental terrorists. And I'm going to go into this more because these same bunch of wackos have now told BNSF Railroad, Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad, BNSF, that you can't build the largest Western regional freight yard in the United States in Barstow, California, because we want battery-operated trains. Well, battery-operated trains don't exist. And all of a sudden, we're talking about taking $1.5 billion worth of construction money and shipping that money to what? Phoenix? Because Phoenix says, are you crazy? We're not going to have any of that battery-operated train stuff here. You can bring it over there, right? You would think that's the end of the story. And that is plan B, don't get me wrong. But in fact, this situation rolled up to the point that the rest of the railroad companies in the United States had to turn around and tell CARB, California Air Resources Board, CARB, that we are not switching our trains at your border for diesel trains to battery-operated trains. Number one, battery-operated trains don't even exist to buy them if you wanted to. So all of a sudden, this battery-operated train having to switch tracks for every rail coming in or out of California from LA Wilmington Harbor, really the busiest Western regional port in the United States, is going to suddenly not be able to operate because it doesn't have battery-operated trains to send all of the trains to the border of Arizona, Nevada, or even points farther north, Oregon, or whatever the case might be. Battery-operated trains don't exist. Well, this ends up affecting every port in the United States, meaning the freight yard ports of Nevada, Miami, Chicago, Kansas, Phoenix, Arizona. And they've said, listen, you're going to bankrupt all of us trying to tell us we have to use battery-operated trains that don't exist. This turned into a congressional committee meeting in Washington, D.C. And let me tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, I personally witnessed this person, Arias, from California Air Resources Board, CARB, sitting on the panel, get absolutely mauled by at least 10 congressmen that I witnessed interrogate her as to the thought process and where it came from. The other two panel members were in construction, and the other panel member was from BNSF Railroad, and they just continued to outline the restrictions that CARB tried to throw on them, right? So at the end of it, it turns out that one of the best congressmen that I heard say anything turned around and said, let me get this right. You're an unappointed board of people on CARB, or unelected board of people on CARB, California Air Resources Board, and you've managed to pass a rule or a regulation and now want to have it enforced as if it were a law in your state, where it is going to then have to be enforced as a law in our states across the nation. So not only you're an unelected board that was set in place with this regulation, you did not run it through your state assembly or your state senate or a vote of the people, and now you're going to impose it upon the entire nation. Not no, but hell no. This isn't going to happen. Ladies and gentlemen, Jay Obernolte fought this tooth and nail and even passed a bill to cut off the waiver funding from the EPA to transportation to allow that to happen. So thank you, Jay Obernolte, and thank you, Will Burns in Washington, D.C., for everything that you did. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the kind of government overreach that we're looking to identify, bring to the public, let you know just how much it can affect your economy. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Bill Jensen. You are watching The Strike Zone, and this is VBS Broadcasting System bringing you this information live from Garden Grove, California. Thank you.